Maybe we just have to let it go. Just give them- Did it work last time? Can I hear? Maybe that's smart. Yeah. 1 second. I know. It's everything in the calendar. I believe. I'm gonna go grab.
Welcome to the First National Heritage Month celebration of Filipino Heritage Month. I'd like to welcome all of you, and I'm particularly pleased to be here with all of the. This is the first time that we've ever done this. We usually host our Filipino Heritage Month celebration virtually because of COVID, but also because it's across the country. So we are live streaming this program, and it's also going to be recorded so that future members who may, or existing members who may not have been able to come here to Vancouver to be with us can also watch this at the. So welcome to Vancouver, and we're so pleased that you're able to be today. Can you hear us, Stephanie?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Right now. So our program generally starts with the president giving remarks, and I think Rachel Sachs, where she is, unfortunately couldn't make it to Vancouver this time, but she's attending virtually in North. So if with your indulgence, I'd like to have Rachel say a few words.
Hello, everyone. I'm calling in today from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am so sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm delighted that technology allows us to have this hybrid event. Filipino Heritage Month is still fairly new in Canada, and it's wonderful to see the breadth of events that are happening throughout Ontario, throughout BC, throughout the rest of Canada. And it's so nice for us to be able to contribute to that in some way. I am going to keep my remarks short because there are a lot of great speakers today, and I really just wanted to say thank you to all of you who are attending, and thank you to the Canadian Race Relations Foundation for providing us the funding to host this event in person at this what looks like a really lovely and very well lit venue. And I hope that I will get the chance to meet the rest of you in person who I haven't met, or I mean, even one-on-one virtually. I look forward to that. And I'm going to pass it back to our team in BC, and hopefully we get a little better audio. That would be great for the recording and for anybody watching live.
Well, as I said, as Rachel said, we're very proud that you can please contribute to the celebration of Filipino Heritage Month. Lawyers, Filipino Canadian lawyers, for the first time, have organized themselves as a national organization. And as I watch on the news across the country, I see that there are many Filipino Canadian organizations that are doing the same. This month. In fact, in Vancouver today, the consulate, the Philippine consulate, is having a trade fair, and the trade fair and food fair, I understand, a drop of square in 4 days. So it's again to know Filipino Heritage Month and the contributions that Filipino entrepreneurs have made in Canada. So with a short note, I would like to introduce our guest overviewer. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you that I spoke with Justice Steve Rosa of the Court of Appeal, and I told him that we were having this keynote speaker, and he was very pleased about that. He said he hopes that there will be many more Canadian justices of Philippine ethnicity within the 5 to 10 years, and he offered to speak to anyone across Canada that would be willing to talk to him and ask for his ideas about and comments about the judiciary. It seems like more Filipino Canadian lawyers to and be members of the judiciary across Canada. And I can tell you that the Department of the Levy have also voiced that comment, and we're trying to fill the slate of vacant justices across Canada. We're pursuant to Justice Wagner's request that there be more justices across Canada being appointed. I would also like to say that on behalf of the Austin Society Historical Program, they, Patricia McMahon, who's a volunteer coordinator, have also wished us a happy Filipino Heritage Day, and she said, please tell those lawyers that we would like to chronicle their stories, as I have chronicled Justice Perosa and others such as yourself, and we'd like to see more Filipino Canadian lawyers' stories in the Austin Historical Society website. So, on that note, Jessica Hilliard. Jessica Hilliard is a member of the Ontario Court of Justice, and she did in Simcoe and in Brampton, and she was appointed in 2017. Jessica Hilliard will talk more about her beginning, and I will, turn it over to Jessica Hilliard so that she can talk to us more about her life, but also about the importance of inclusion, diversity, and religious identity. So Jessica Hilliard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alicia and Rachel. I'm honored to be asked to give the keynote address at this special event. And I'm very grateful that technology allows me to join you all in Vancouver to kick off Filipino Heritage Month, as well as everyone who is joining remotely. It's wonderful to see all of you gathered there in person, and I saw some little ones wandering around as well. I think that's fantastic. I want to also thank the FCLN board and the membership at large for the important work this organization does to support and promote Filipino Canadian lawyers. I'm coming to you from my chambers in Simcoe, Ontario, which is on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, and having been reminded recently by a colleague that truth necessarily comes before reconciliation, I would take this opportunity to pause and remember that the opportunities that we and/or our parents who came to this country in pursuit of are available as a direct result of colonization and the displacement and disenfranchisement of Indigenous peoples of this country. Filipino Heritage Month being in June of each year is particularly poignant for me, as my mother, who was Filipino in ethnicity, was born on June 25th. My mother was born in Manila. She was the fifth in what would become a family of nine, five born in the Philippines, she being the last, and four more born in the United States. My grandpa fought with MacArthur's forces in World War II, and he was captured when the Americans withdrew and emigrated with his family to the United States, ultimately coming to settle in Seattle, Washington. My mother and her family faced significant adversity after her father died when she was only 12. The restaurant that her parents had been running had to be shut down, and her mother struggled to provide financially for the family. My mother had dreamed of becoming a human rights lawyer, but due to financial realities and personal circumstances, instead went to beauty school and became a hairdresser. My parents moved to Canada, where my father was born and grew up just before I turned 2. So I grew up in Scarborough, Ontario. I went to McMaster University for my undergraduate, and then Dalhousie in Nova Scotia for law school. In 2005, just before my call to the bar, I moved from Toronto to Hamilton to take a job in the rural town of Caledonia in Haldimand County, the county that became and is to this day the community that I call home. I spent 13 years in private practice, mainly in the areas of family and criminal defense. The bulk of my clients were financially or socially marginalized. I was appointed to the Ontario Court of Justice in December of 2018, assigned to Simcoe, Norfolk County. I sit as what we refer to in the Ontario Court of Justice, or the OCJ, as a two-hatter. I preside in the areas of both criminal and family matters. I want to, as well, recognize my other federally appointed colleagues who are Filipino first as we reflect and kick off Filipino Heritage Month. At the time of my appointment in December of 2018, there were 2 other Filipino judges in Canada. Alicia's already mentioned Justice Steve Carrozza, who does sit in Ontario. At that time, he was sitting on the Superior Court of Justice, having first been appointed to the Ontario Court of Justice in 2009 and then elevated to the Court of Appeal in 2020. And in 2018, there was also Justice Bernat Ho, who at that time was on the Quebec Court of Appeal, and then in 2021 made history, being appointed as the first Philippine-born justice to be appointed to the Alberta Court of Appeal after sitting only 3 years on the Alberta Queen's Bench. And in that same year, Justice Gatchalian was also appointed to the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia. The achievements of Justices Carrozza, Ho, and Gatchalian continue to inspire me to this day. As I prepared to give my remarks for this event, I took the opportunity to watch some of the 2022 Zoom roundtable discussions with those 3 justices as part of last year's FCLN celebration of Filipino Heritage Month. And I was struck by their comments, all of them, about public service and giving back to the community. as what drove them, in part, perhaps large part, to pursue a career in the law and then pursue appointment to the bench. I too was driven to pursue a career in the law, and in particular as a judge, out of a desire to bring justice to the people. I think my drive for social justice comes in part from the discrimination experienced by my mother, both as she was growing up and continuing as an adult, often being mistaken for our nanny rather than our mother when she took my sister and I out on outings in Toronto, often using public transit. All of us Filipinos are immigrants, either ourselves or the children of immigrants. We or our parents came to this country for the opportunity to have a more prosperous life. And I think part of that immigrant experience that we as Filipinos bring is to our work as lawyers and judges is a sense of gratitude for the many opportunities that living in Canada has provided for us. We are very lucky, I think, to live in a country that allows and encourages us to embrace our ethnic and cultural heritage, proof of which is this event in and of itself, the declaration of Filipino Heritage Month. And I think this fuels a desire in most, if not all of us, to contribute to the community which we are involved in the justice system. And we do that each and every day that we go to work as lawyers and judges. This is vitally important in my view, because lawyers are in the business of providing a service to the public. And remembering the importance of serving and giving back to the community is essential to the well-being of the justice system. Justice Carrozza last year also mentioned the importance of representation of diverse ethnic minorities in the legal profession. I think this is worth highlighting as we contemplate the role we as Filipinos have to play in the broader legal community. It is, in my view, important that we see ourselves in our colleagues and on the bench, that we know and believe that the collective lived experience of our people is brought to bear on the administration of justice. And I want to share with you my experience, personal experience in that regard. The first time that I saw Justice Carrozza, I was about 4 years into practice, and I was like any other day in one of the small courtrooms in Cayuga, which is the seat of Haldeman County and where the courthouse is. I was sitting in courtroom 3, the criminal court, defense lawyers, many of us tightly packed into chairs lined against the wall, just like any other day. And again, like any other day, the court clerk said, "Order, all rise." And I still remember standing up and looking to the chamber's door and seeing a Filipino man walk out of the chambers adjoining the courtroom, take the few steps up, and sit down on the dais, poised and confident, commanding attention in the courtroom. But it took me a moment to recover from the shock of seeing a Filipino judge and amazement. To that date, I think I knew only 2 other Filipino lawyers. Seeing someone in a role that you aspire to, who looks like you, who has the same ethnic and cultural background as you, instills a belief in your ability to achieve what they have achieved, to strive for things you may not have otherwise thought possible. I've spoken with other lawyers of color, and we all agree that, in particular, appearing before a judge who looks like you or a member of your family has a significant impact on your feeling of inclusion and confidence that you are seen and not just heard. As of the 2021 census, Filipino Canadians numbered just under 1 million across the country, representing 2.5% of the population. We are one of the largest ethnic minority groups in Canada. Out of 1,181 sitting federally appointed judges across the country, 3 are Filipino. or only 0.25%. I don't count because I'm a provincially appointed judge. But I'm the only Filipino judge in the Ontario Court of Justice, which we are about 300 strong, counting full-time sitting and per diem judges. In Manitoba, Filipinos are 7.2% of the population, and there are no Filipino judges in that entire province. I would argue that it is perhaps more important to have meaningful representation in the legal community, even than within the judiciary. In part because representation amongst the judiciary comes only from representation within the lawyers in Canada. And many people will go their entire lives and never be inside a courtroom. But almost everyone will need a lawyer at some point to purchase real estate, to draft a will, to assist with the estate of a parent or a relative, to draft a separation or cohabitation agreement, a commercial agreement, or a residential or commercial lease. Laws impact all of us as Canadians, and those who participate in the legal system influence the evolution of Canadian laws. The importance of having people who represent you, who understand your cultural and ethnic values, is vital to the well-being of our legal system. Confidence in the administration of justice comes from knowing and believing that you have a meaningful ability to participate in or are represented by those who are in the system. So I would encourage you today and in the days ahead to continue to participate in your communities, mentor young people, sit on boards and committees that consult on or are consulted by all levels of government responsible for making laws. Together, we can impact the course of and the trajectory of laws in Canada and the way in which we represent all of Filipino Canadians as legal professionals provides, as I say, confidence in the administration of justice. Thank you so much for allowing me to make these remarks to you, and I hope that you enjoy the remainder of the celebration today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. But lots of we can see that before, and you would love that. Enjoy the food that as we have here. Oh, I've got a mic. Anyway, thank you so much for taking time, and we will take your comments to heart. We all appreciate the comments that you have made and the thoughts that you have provoked. So on that note, thank you very much, Justice Hilliard. We will now proceed to the second part of our program, which is a panel of 4 lawyers from practicing in Vancouver in different areas. So just for technical reasons, we're now going to switch the camera, all right? So I'll just move out. So while Eunice is focusing us, I just want to thank her. Eunice has worked very hard in putting this program together. Eunice is a lawyer and associate with Bennett Jones. She's also our tech person. So she can do more than practice law. So on that note, so we have a wonderful panel of 4 lawyers practicing in Vancouver in different capacities and venues. So I'm just going to, for our viewers across Canada, just identify who they are, and you can see their the placards in front of their name with their names. And I will ask them firstly to just identify themselves to our viewers and identify their areas of practice. So I have here to my left, my first left, is Melissa Brianna. She's the founder
and principal of Northern Law. And then right beside her is Franco Cabanos, who's a partner with White Law Twining. And then beside him is Renee John Nicola, who's the vice chair at the British Columbia Labor Relations Board. And then lastly is Cyril Panadero, who is an associate with JML, and he's going to tell us later on what JML stands for. But for now, I would like to just start with Melissa. You know, Melissa is also a practicing lawyer in the Philippines before she was admitted to the BC bar. And before I continue, maybe Melissa, you could just tell us briefly how you came about to be practicing in British Columbia and the firm that you're now the principal of.
Yes. I'm Melissa Remulia Briones, used to be hyphenated, but I dropped it. I'm just Maria Melissa Briones now. My Maria is spelled out, not M-E. Anyway, yeah, when I came to Canada, I was already a lawyer in the Philippines, graduated from the UP College of Law. I thought I would be a shoe-in for a law firm, but I had 100 applications out, 0 responses. So, well, I tried to challenge my exams. I had to do 8 exams. And while I was doing that, I studied HR, human resources at Ashton College. So that was my entry point into a manufacturing company. I became their HR manager. And that same company made me in-house counsel when I already became a lawyer. It was blood, sweat, and tears, as most of the stories, maybe some of the stories are, but I would say that it's very rewarding, and especially now here in a room full of Filipino Canadians. I'm so inspired and so proud that we're this force. So yes.
So in Northern Law,
Yes.
what areas of practice do you
Mhm.
specialize in?
So I'm in-house counsel. So I do corporate commercial, I do business law, I do contracts and employment because of my HR background. And I also do family law, wills and estates, real estate conveyancing, a little bit of probate, but I don't do any litigation.
So general practice.
General
Yes,
practice.
registered.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
so next is Franco.
Hi, everyone. I should start off by saying thanks to Eunice, Jerica, Alicia for making it out here. These events are actually really great for the community. We've had a number of events over the last couple of months, a lot of new faces, a lot of new people, and it's really great to see you all here. And so who am I? I'm Franco Cabanos. I'm a partner at White Law Twining. I practice primarily in insurance law, a lot of subrogation, and a little bit of commercial litigation. My path to becoming a lawyer here in BC and ultimately a partner at White Law Twining. My parents both immigrated from the Philippines. They met here in Vancouver. And I was born in Vancouver and raised in Surrey. I went to SFU to do, I did a criminology degree. And at the time I was influenced by CSI and I thought I was going to do some sort of forensic type work. But I hated lab work. I really hated lab work. So I ultimately decided, well, what am I going to do? I thought criminology, that's very similar to CSI. So I did that degree. But then when I graduated, I thought, I don't want to be a cop. I don't want to work in corrections. So I didn't know what to do. I took time off. I actually took a year off and I played poker. That was my.
Did you win?
I did make some money. But over the course of that year, I sort of realized, well, there's got to be something more that I could do, not to disparage anyone who plays poker for a living, but I just felt like my grades were good, so I should maybe do something else. So I wrote the LSAT. And being from BC, I had always wanted to go to school out here in BC. But I guess my grades weren't that good. So I went to what I call the Harvard of Manitoba. I went to the University of Manitoba, which is categorically the best law school in the entire province of Manitoba. And so I went there, but an interesting tidbit about that actually is Justice Hilliard was talking about Filipinos being 7.5% of the population in Winnipeg or in Manitoba. When I look back, I graduated in 2008. I don't think I graduated with another Filipino. I think I was the only one, which is, yeah, it was a small class, but still to know that Filipinos represented that large of a percentage of the population, but there was nobody else, at least in my graduating class. But anyways, fast forward, I graduated and I always wanted to come back to BC. And so what I did was I literally Googled every law firm in the Lower Mainland and I sent an application during the summer interview period. I got a couple of interviews, but I did not get a job during that interview week. So it was a bit discouraging, but because I had sent out so many, eventually a law firm out in Surrey, they had received my application. They phoned me up a few months later and said, "Hey, do you want to interview?" And anyways, I thankfully ended up getting a job and I summered and articled in Surrey, and then I joined White Law Twining in 2011. And now I'm a partner. I will put in a little bit of a plug for my firm. Some of you people might be aware that White Law Twining recently merged with the DWF Group, which is a UK-based international company that's publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange. So it is the first of its kind in North America for a law firm to have some form of ownership affiliation through a publicly traded company. And so that just happened recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, thank you for that. Oh, sorry, I'm pronouncing it in French, right? Yes.
Thank you. And I just want to echo Franco's comments about thanking the organizers. It's great that the community, particularly lawyers in the community, can gather and engage with one another. I think it's incredibly important, and I'm glad to see it happening. My story, I'm a second generation Filipino Canadian. My parents immigrated from Pampanga province in the Philippines in the late 70s, early 80s. My story in terms of getting to where I am now, I think Justice Hilliard kind of talked about the importance of seeing yourself reflected in the important institutions in this country, including the judiciary. For me, that resonated insofar as one of my first key experiences. Well, growing up, I grew up around a lot of Filipinos, cousins, friends. I didn't really think about myself as being Filipino or being different in any way because I was Filipino. It was when I stepped onto the campus at UBC, where for the first time significantly in my life, I realized that I was othered, that I didn't see myself reflected in the institution. And so it was that feeling which prompted me to start trying to connect with other Filipinos, particularly on campus, and start building, places for ourselves on campus. And so that resulted in helping found the Filipino Canadian Student Association on campus, engaging with other community organizations like the Filipino Women's Center. And it was that experience at the Filipino Women's Center where I met a very foundational person in my life. And that is Ning Alquitas Imperial, who is the chair of the Workers' Compensation Appeal Tribunal here in BC. And she is a lawyer, and she was the first person that demonstrated to me that, oh, it's possible for us to be lawyers. It's something that we can do. And she was gracious enough to bring me along in that regard, to put the seed in my mind that, hey, maybe you should go to law school. And maybe you can use law school as a tool to work on the things that you're passionate about, including community issues. The community issues at the time that I was passionate about involved work with migrant workers, domestic workers in particular, issues around underrepresentation in the educational system. And so she put the seed in my mind that, look, law school is a great tool. The practice of law, yes, it's a way that you can make a living, but it's also a way that you could try to address some of the issues that you find important in your life. And so I went to UBC Law, finished, and got introduced to the trade union movement, which resulted in me articling at a union-side labor employment firm, representing unions and workers, then an in-house position at the BC General Service Employees Union for a couple of years, until I was appointed last year in April 2022 as a vice chair at the Labor Relations Board. So That's my story in a nutshell.
Hi there. My name's Cyril Panadero. I'm a family lawyer at Jenkins Marsban Logan. I'm a second generation Filipino Canadian. My parents immigrated here in the late 1980s from Iloilo. I would describe my household as a traditional Filipino household. We were working class. Growing up, my parents worked 3 jobs to support the family. No lawyers in my family, so on my mom or my dad's side, so I'm the first lawyer in my family. That came with its own set of challenges. Not having any lawyer role models within my family that I can talk to about, the practice of law and what it entailed. And I didn't know any Filipino lawyers in the community, so I came through a lot of struggles going through the process. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of imposter syndrome, wondering whether this is even attainable for a Filipino Canadian from a working class household. So there was a lot of those struggles. I am foreign trained, so that came with its own set of hurdles. So I'm sure Melissa and the other Filipino trained lawyers here understand when you're going through the NCA process, it is difficult. Melissa had mentioned that she applied to like 100 firms and didn't get an interview. I applied to probably around the same amount. I remember meeting with Renee for coffee one day, showing him my spreadsheet, and there was 80 firms on there, and it was all red, meaning that I got rejected. And I was just like, Renee, what do I do? Do I even go to law? And ended up articling with a sole practitioner, got an associate position at a mid-sized firm in Richmond, and now I'm at a litigation boutique in Vancouver. It's a very good firm. I think there's 4 KCs in the last 10 years. I think 4 lawyers from the firm have been appointed to the Supreme Court bench. So came with a lot of really hard work to get to where I was now, or where I am now. And I think I owe a lot of that to the resilience and resourcefulness from my parents, and I think that a lot of Filipinos have. So.
Okay, we're transferring all these microphones back and forth. So, I get a lot of questions when I talk with Filipino Canadians and, trying to encourage them to go into law and so on. And the question that is often asked is, is my ethnicity going to be a factor when I apply to law school or to law, when I end up practicing and looking for articling? So Melissa, you gave us some information about, your hardship, so what advice would you say? Is your ethnicity a factor at all?
The answer is yes. The fact that I'm a mother with 2 children and I'm a wife, yes. The fact that I'm female, yes. All of those are factors. But I think my being a Filipino Canadian is a superpower, really. I think when I was starting out, I didn't know that there was a market out there of Filipino Canadians, and they're there. And they're my superpower. And I think I would not have it any other way. They needed a voice, and I came to be that voice. And I think that would be my inspiration to go on and move forward. And I know that if I go to a bigger law firm, then it's not going to be the same. But I'm in my own little island with my own group of people that support me, understand me. I can talk to them, they can talk to me. On the get-go, when I talk to them on the phone, I talk to them in Tagalog already, because it's almost intuitive. You know from the names that they're Filipinos, and that way they're already comfortable with me. They tell me, you're Filipino, ay, salamat, thank you. And then we already start, being vulnerable to each other. So yeah, it's a superpower.
So, Franca, you're in the firm one. Was your ethnicity at all factored in, when they applied and when they made you?
Yeah, so I don't know that it has been. Maybe I've been very fortunate in my career and in my path. It's at least not perceived by me to have been an overt factor. And again, I think I recognize that I am perhaps fortunate for that. But certainly, I always think about these things that happen very innocently, I think, and we've talked about this before, where from time to time you will meet other lawyers who might actually reference something like, oh, my nanny is Filipino. I always took that as a personal offense. And I don't know why, because when I look back now that I'm older, I actually feel like I don't think there was necessarily any malice to people mentioning that. It might actually just be a means of them to connect with you, because that's something. But going on that, and I always use some of that maybe as a motivating factor. Another thing that's kind of analogous is like I always looked very young. And so I always had this idea, I had this idea that if I look young, I will not be respected, which is perhaps not unlike how some Filipinos perceive themselves. And so what I did, I always felt that I was always over prepared for everything that I did, because I felt like if I talked with confidence and that I knew what I was talking about, actually, eventually people will listen. So that has actually been my experience. So when it came to dealing with clients, dealing with the court, whether my own perception or my own concerns relate to my ethnicity or the fact that I looked young, I use that as a motivating factor to be over prepared and really try to, I suppose, earn or gain that respect. So,
what about your, mission to being a partner? Is that a factor at all? What is a factor to being a partner?
Yeah, so to being a partner, well, at our firm at the time, I became a partner before we had merged with the DWF group. There was this whole process actually to becoming a partner, at least at White Law Twining at the time. And it was this sort of application process. And there's no, I had to basically lay out why I thought that I should be a partner. And there really are 4 things that I had decided, or that I thought were the key things. And I think this would apply to anyone across any practice. But the first thing is having legal skills. You've got to be competent at your craft, right? So that's number 1. And number 2, I am in private practice. And so having a book of business, it does matter, because you are ultimately asking partners of a law firm to share in profits with you. And so the question that is often asked is, well, what are you bringing to the table in order for us to share those with you? And so I had got myself to a point where I did have a book of business where I was contributing to the practice. The third thing that I think is sort of the intangibles, like in addition to what are you doing for the firm financially, well, how can you help in the administration of the firm? I was very involved. And so those are things that I did. And then the last thing, for me at least, because I was a younger lawyer, was I was selling the firm on my future, right? And so I thought that there were a number of things. In addition to what I had done, I sold what I saw myself as doing in the future and how I would contribute. So those are, in my mind, the factors that would make for a successful partner.
So it appears that maybe it was not.
Well, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, in some respects, in developing the book of business, maybe it was, but not necessarily in the internal decision to be a partner, but in the steps that was required of me. I mean, I had some clients that were Filipino and certainly Asian, and that helped from an ethnicity standpoint to be able to associate and relate with some of those clients. So it helped. Again, like I said, nothing overtly. And I think I was very fortunate, because I hear stories where, like there were those challenges that people had to go through. And so I think I do consider myself lucky for not having to necessarily go through that and see it myself. But
So, you're not a part. What would your response? Let's say have name, say if name was not.
Mhm.
Would it be different?
I think particularly with respect to my most recent appointment at the Labor Relations Board, I think ethnicity was a factor, and I think that's a good thing. I believe Justice Hilliard talked about, again, this theme of institutions reflecting the people that they serve. and particularly our institutions of justice, the judiciary reflecting the lived experiences of the community that it serves. And I think the same thing can be said for administrative tribunals like the tribunal that I sit on. And so I think there has been a push in recent years to try to ensure that our institutions of justice, like our administrative tribunals and judiciaries, are reflecting our various communities. And in particular, I think CABRO, which is the agency responsible for appointments to provincial administrative tribunals here in BC, has done as recently done a really good job of centering the idea of diversity and inclusion within the administrative justice system, and doing a better job of reaching out to communities that maybe aren't traditionally represented on those tribunals. For instance, Franco was there. The Circle of Chairs, which is all the chairs of the administrative tribunals here in BC, a couple of years ago, sat down with various lawyers in the Filipino community to explain the process of getting appointed to administrative tribunals, and encouraged applications. So then chair of the Civil Resolution Tribunal, now working in the Premier's office, Shannon Salter was there. Jackie De Aguayo, who's the former chair of the Labor Relations Board, was there. I forget her name, and I should know her name, but she was the chair of the Human Rights Tribunal at the time, was also there. They took pains to reach out to our community, explain the process, and encourage us to apply. And so that's not to say, that our community didn't have a role in that. There was a group of lawyers who were organizing at the time that insisted on meetings with, at the time, AG David Eby and the Circle of Chairs to get these meetings going. So I think, that helped, and that put on the radar this notion of, again, having our institutions reflect the communities that they serve. And so I do like to think that, my appointment, being a Filipino Canadian, was part of government's decision to appoint me to the Labor Relations Board, which was, traditionally an institution where there wasn't a ton of diversity, if I'm speaking frankly. So I think, yes, it was a factor, and I think it's good that it was.
Sorry to interrupt everybody. We cannot hear on the Zoom or YouTube stream if you don't pass the mic between you when speaking. So anybody who doesn't have the mic in front of them, we can't hear. And that would be great if you could share that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you're there. So did you hear my last question, Rachel? Or shall I rephrase it again?
Please repeat it for us.
Okay, all right. So I was just, passing the mic on to Cyril, and he's a practitioner in private practice with JML. And I was asking him, what is his experience, and commenting on whether or not ethnicity was a factor at all in his association with his current law firm. So I'm going to pass it back to Cyril.
Yeah, I don't know if my ethnicity was a factor in my association with my current law firm. But I think in terms of the practice of law, I think my ethnicity is a factor in the sense that I'm motivated by the fact that, currently there aren't that many Filipino lawyers. I think we're very underrepresented in the community relative to the community size. 10 years ago or so, the Law Society put out an equity report, and I think for every one Filipino lawyer, there is 1,916 Filipinos in the community. So in terms of my ethnicity being a factor in the profession, I carry a lot of pressure and motivation as a Filipino lawyer. I'm hoping to be, a good role model as a Filipino lawyer. I volunteer with Amici Curiae, and we assist a lot of self-represented Filipinos who can't afford the legal process. So, it's refreshing to see all these faces here, and I'm hoping that the representation does increase. But yes, in that sense, my ethnicity was a factor in terms of how I approached the profession and how I viewed myself within the profession. Within my firm specifically, I don't think it really played a role.
So do you think it's you have a responsibility to encourage more Filipino Canadians in your sphere of influence? Do you think that's a responsibility that Filipino Canadian lawyers should or may have?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We should encourage more. The thing is when I talk to my clients and they delve with other lawyers, but not to disparage other lawyers, they say that they felt that they were not listened to, not understood. We have a different culture. We have different customs. We look each other in the eye and we know. So that is missing in that conversation meeting, and everything's not captured. So if it's not captured, and if we're not there, not to educate them, but to be with them and to help them understand us, then who's going to take care of all the Filipino Canadians? So yeah, it's I think it's our duty to be out there and to get them to see us, understand our people, because we have a lot to say, and we want to have a say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as lawyers, for not just us at the panel, but all of you guys out there as well, I think we do have the opportunity to be influential. We also have the opportunity within our community to work together and raise the profile of the Filipino community, which I believe is actually quite important for all of us. We hear differing stories about differing experiences. But what we see, though, is all of us getting together here and at these other events. And as we do this, I think it raises the profile so that we are more visible, so that we are able to, get better clients, so that we're able to take on appointments at the bench. And so I think all of those things are important. I'd lost my train of thought there. But, do we have the responsibility? I think that, oh, sorry, this is what I was going to say. Cyril had touched on something earlier when he was talking about his path to becoming a lawyer, and he's the only lawyer in his family. I experienced a lot of that as well, where I'm the only lawyer in my family. And I suppose one of the challenges that I found entering into the profession was not necessarily the law and not having lawyers, although that was a factor, but just coming from immigrant families where you don't have people who are in the business community at large. And so when you're dealing with clients and you're not actually exposed to small businesses, large businesses, or whatever the case may be, it is a new thing that you have to adapt to and you have to adjust. And if you're not surrounded by that immediately, it is an adjustment, and you kind of feel like you're a little bit behind the 8 ball. And so when I talk about raising the profile of the community, I don't just mean lawyers. I actually think we can be influential in the spheres of business and in other areas, so that future generations, when they go into practicing law, they are familiar with some of the concepts that you might see, whether it's accounting, whether it's some small business or large business. And so anyways, I think that those are things that we have the opportunity as a group to influence.
Yeah, no, I do believe that we have a responsibility as lawyers, particularly lawyers in a community that is underserviced in terms of legal services, to encourage others to consider the profession. Again, I go back to my experience with Ningal Quitas and Cyril and Franco. I didn't have lawyers in my family. I didn't know that that was a possibility. And so being able to even just demonstrate that, hey, there's somebody that does this, it's a possibility. There's someone from the community that does this kind of work. It's a possibility for me. That in itself is important, but I think we do also need to take the extra step of, reaching out, developing and being willing mentors to individuals that express an interest in this area. Because like Franco says, it's only helpful in terms of raising the profile of our community, but also ensuring that our community believes in and trusts, again, the institutions of justice, which are key to continuing our society operating. So I'll tell a quick story. I remember meeting Franco for the first time, and when he mentioned that he was a partner at White Law Attorney, I was obviously I didn't say this out loud because it would be incredibly embarrassing. But I'm gonna say it out loud right now. I was like, wow, there's a partner at a major firm, downtown firm here, and being incredibly impressed by that. I remember thinking to myself, like, well, our community is getting up there. They're in the hall, these halls where we haven't traditionally been. So yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, Frank. Yeah, Franco, I just met you today, but I was thinking the same thing when I saw the website. I was like, is that partner Filipino? Do lawyers have a responsibility? Yes. You know, part of the code of conduct of the Law Society of BC, it's lawyers have the duty to act honorably and with integrity, and that's not just to the courts and clients and the judiciary, but to the public as well. So yes, we do have a responsibility. I think as a Filipino Canadian lawyer, thinking about my own experiences coming up into the profession and going through law school and process and everything, I do feel an added sense of responsibility to try and mentor the younger lawyers as well and law students. Something that I felt that I didn't really have, and part of the reason why I felt that becoming a lawyer was so unattainable until I met, lawyers like Renee and other Filipino lawyers in the community. So I do feel that sense of responsibility to be a good role model and a mentor for other lawyers, and just give the younger Filipino Canadian youth a feeling like this is realistic and attainable, and they can do it and hopefully get more representation within the community.
I just want to add one other thing as well. When we talk about influence, by having networks like this, there's also an opportunity for all of us to do each other favors. We have a network of Filipinos who only recently have started to get together. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to refer work to each other, to reach out to a lawyer if you have a question about an area of law. And so it's not just role models for the younger generation. It actually really is a network for where all of us can benefit.
Actually, that's a great segue, because my next question was really, the Filipino Canadian Lawyers Network was just launched in 2021. But the vision was to create a network of Filipino Canadian lawyers across Canada, where we could refer clients to each other, get to know each other, and basically promote and support Filipino Canadian lawyers. And one of the thoughts, well, maybe I should post it as a question. So what do you think the network, FCLN, should be doing to promote and support Filipino Canadian lawyers across Canada?
Have more events like this, maybe write a book. Launch a book. What else? We have to highlight our unique abilities and our unique talents. A musical, perhaps. We'll say. We have a lot of singers out here. But yeah, no, there's a lot of things that we can do, I think.
I think we've got a lot of momentum already going, which is great. And so within the legal community, being able to connect the lawyers together, that's one step. Other things that I think this organization can do is to, when I keep talking about raising their profile, is for this network to actually get involved in tandem with other Filipino groups that aren't necessarily lawyers, all of which, again, we have skills, services that we can offer to other organizations. And all of this is just kind of bringing everyone together and just raising the profile. So getting connected with other organizations, I think, is important.
Yeah, and then the other members on the panel have already addressed a lot of these issues. And I think they're all great suggestions about what the network can do. I think the other major area would be, being a voice for the community with decision makers. So whether it be, judicial appointments, whether it be CABRA with respect to administrative tribunals. Also just generally when there's issues around, the administration of justice that affects our community, the network being a voice on that, maybe engaging with, individuals like the AG, the Law Society, being that type of voice, engaging with, again, these institutions within the administration of justice. So that would be my only additional thought.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Renee just said. I think the other thing too is, it's great to have a network for Filipino lawyers to be able to get to know one another, but I think it would be nice as well to, share that network with the community. And not a lot of Filipinos know a lot of Filipino lawyers. So if FCLN, was able to market themselves and, there's so many different lawyers with so many different practice areas and different skills. And a lot of people, especially Filipinos, from my experience at least, they feel more comfortable, being able to speak with another Filipino about their legal issues, but they don't know any Filipino lawyers. So, I don't know what that would look like, but I'm thinking that, that would be a good initiative to do. It's also a good source of business for the lawyers here too, so.
If I may add, I don't know if it's already existing, but if we have a directory on a website with our practice areas all across Canada, that would be a good start.
Actually, that's in the works and Rachel is looking into that. So I just want to respond to some of the comments that have been made. So Melissa talked about, writing a book. Maybe Eleanor, can undertake that task. But really, the reason why the network has partnered with the Osgood Society Historical Program was actually to chronicle the stories of Filipino-Canadian lawyers. And I have to say that I've done 3 here in Vancouver. Mylene is one of them. Winston Saison, I have to say, is the first one whose transcript, he was so good. He's the very first one of the transcripts of the interviews that we did that is now with the Osgood Society Historical Program. So he's the first one. There are several others that I'm still waiting for. Ning as well is one of them. So as we chronicle these Filipino lawyers, and it doesn't matter, I've done all the ones of the first and so on. So I'm looking at from every province because that's important. We have to select the provinces and so on. And the reason why the Osgood Society is good is because, sometimes people don't read books. Well, they may not even do, but it's just one way. But we need somebody who would like to do that. And then the question is, who do you profile, right, in that book? And how I see the Osgood Society Historical Program is that it's everyone and it's in your own words. The transcripts reflect the questions that are being asked. And so it is your story and it's not edited by anyone. When I receive the transcript, I look at the questions, I revise the questions to make it more readable, but I allow the interviewee to edit the answers that are given. And you could add, you could, remove. So in that respect, I feel that it is firsthand a story, their story as they see it, not anyone else's. But I welcome, any person that may want to write a book about it. So we've talked about the membership, and yes, we've thought about that. Being part of many communities. So FCLN is part of RODA, which is the Organization for Diversity and so on. And Rachel sits on that. And whenever they advocate for lawyers, and it's a cross-country national organization, we're part of it. So we have done that. And RODA allows the Filipino Canadian Lawyers Network to be part of that network of equity-seeking diverse associations. So we're part of that. In terms of the community at large, we agree with you. We have to do more of that. So we host networking events. So for example, this month, June 28th, we're having an in-person networking event in Toronto that Rachel is organizing to celebrate Pride Month, because we have, members in FCLN that are of that community. And so this is an in-person event. It will also be live streamed and recorded. And Gowlings in Toronto is hosting the venue. So they hosted the first in-person venue, and Jennifer King, who's the partner at Gowlings, is also a partner of Filipino ethnicity. And so she has been very, very instrumental in some of these activities. So she was the one that connected us with the Oski Society Historical Program. We did one in Mississauga with Rechi Valdez to celebrate International Women's Week with Filipino-Canadian vendors, women in particular, food vendors and craft vendors. So, but as you say, FCLN was just launched in 2021, so it's new. We have Alona Mercado, who is a director of FCLN, and she's based in Winnipeg. And she told us at our last executive meeting last week that she's organizing a breakfast of the Filipino-Canadian lawyers in Winnipeg. And apparently, well, I shouldn't say apparently, she told us that there are 33 Filipino-Canadian lawyers in Winnipeg, So she's going to tell them about the network and how they can join. And to strengthen the network, we really would like the members to tell other Filipino-Canadian lawyers to be members. And the reason for that is that's the only way that we could show that the network is representative of Filipino-Canadian lawyers across the country. And, one of the ways that would be useful for those who want to enter the judiciary is really to get the recommendation of FCLN, right? To show that, the Filipino-Canadian community is supportive of that person's application. And because, I still think the network is young, but also we're not that many. So we know each other. I mean, I know because I went through all the lists that I was given of the Vancouver lawyers that we are aware of, but there are more. According to Mylene, there must be at least 66, but we don't know them. And so the only way we get to know them is if you tell us, and then we could create that membership list and, highlight your practice areas, because I do think, I agree with you, that's very important. So the last thing I want to say is that the Philippine Embassy contacted me and said, would your network offer pro bono consultation for our kababayans, because they often are asked and so on. So I said, well, okay, I'll mention that in Vancouver, but I also first initially contacted the Ottawa lawyers, there are 10 of them, and I got 2 responses. One said yes, because she's done that in Windsor, and they always ask me anyway, right? And if they ask me, and if I have the network membership, then I know who to refer them to, because I don't practice all the areas that I'm being asked. Primarily, it's family litigation and real estate, if they have problems in the Philippines. So I would like to know, who of our members are also members of the Philippine Bar, because I will then forward that information. And I did that with one person. She was very happy. So FCLN is, as I say, it's an infancy stage. And we really need your support to make it grow and make it more impactful and supportive of all the initiatives that we want to do. Your ideas are as important. And, I want to thank Jerica and Eunice for being part of that. But we also welcome any of you who wants to be on the board. It's ideas that we want, but right now, it's a hands-on, and it will be hands-on. I chair a number of organizations. We're all hands-on, calling all the members of, that is on the list, because that's the only way that they will ensure that they that there is a connection. You know, emails are great, but calling, talking, that's the way to encourage others to become our members. So what time is it? Are we running out of time? We are running out. What time is it? 2:07. Oh, that's perfect. So, you know, one last parting words, okay? Always, you know, I always ask, well, what would you say, or what would your recommendation be to any Filipino Canadian who wants to enter the profession, or even the judiciary? I often get asked that question.
If you love to read, if you love to write, consider law as a profession. If you like people, if you like expressing your ideas, if you like listening, more than anything, listening. And then this will give you a life that could lead to other pathways. I always say that because it's true. It's true for me, and I think it's true for most of us. Do it.
I always encourage people that are interested in entering into law, Filipino or not, to actually do it. I mean, I think we're all part of a very noble profession where the work that we do matters for our clients. And if you're a litigator, it matters to future generations because it helps build the body of law. So all of that is really nice. And I think that that's really an attractive feature of becoming a lawyer. So I always tell people, if you want to do it, you should do it because it really is a great profession. In terms of advice that I would give to young people who want to be lawyers, young Filipinos, it is a great profession, but it is also a hard profession. It's one where you do have to work. And so be prepared to work. You know, from a practical standpoint, what I would recommend to anyone thinking about going into law to be successful at law, I tell this to all of our students and all of our young lawyers: work on your writing. Like your written work is fundamental. Oral advocacy skills are important, but often your written work is probably going to be what gets you through past the finish lines. And so work on that. Again, I think that that's critical to becoming a successful lawyer. But also remember, we are in the service industry. And so we talk about giving back to the community. Again, something that I think we as lawyers should do, but we are also there servicing clients. And so never lose sight of that. You know, I think that some lawyers sometimes do get a little bit of ego where I am the lawyer and I am so-and-so. But at the end of the day, our job is actually helping people. It's helping clients, helping the administration of justice. And so just never lose sight of that. I think if you keep that in the back of your mind, that will help you in the course of your career.
I've actually had to think about this question a little bit because I'm supposed to meet with my niece, who's part of the third generation of our family, who's expressed an interest in becoming a lawyer, going to law school. And so I have to think about a little bit about what I'm going to tell her in terms of what you should think about in terms of if you want to be a lawyer. And what's come to me so far is something to the effect of, I think it's important to think about using law as a tool. Yes, legal practice is a good way to make a living for sure. But if you can think about what it is, the issues that you're passionate about, what problems in the world that you want to solve or address, that will help you when you go to law school in figuring out what areas you want to go into, what you might want to use the law or a legal practice to do. So I think that's what I'd like to impart to her. And I think that's in large part what I say to a number of the folks who come to me asking for advice around, you know, what should I do to get into law school? What should I do to become a lawyer? Largely, that's what I tell them is, you know, think about what you're passionate about and think about how the law or the practice of law might be a way to address that and to live the values that you have around that and to address those issues. And I mean, that process is, I think, in hindsight, served me well.
I guess thinking from my own experience, I think if you can, you know, if you're thinking of going to law school and you're able to get in touch with a lawyer maybe gets some experience working at a firm or, getting an understanding of what his or her practice is like. I think that's important. Going into articling after, having not really interacted with any lawyers, it was a big wake up call for me. So there's that. The other thing I would say too is that, reading and writing skills are very important, but I think another intangible skill is just the people skills, especially in litigation. I do family law. And, it's so important to, yes, lawyers are smart and you have to be able to write and stuff, but being able to develop a good rapport with clients, sometimes difficult clients and opposing counsel, I think that's very important. And so, working on those people skills and just being, a good person, applying the golden rule in your practice, even in litigation, I think is important. So, yeah.
Reach out to people. Find mentors. I mean, just what this room has shown is that there are a number of people that want to connect, and there are people that want to help. And so for young lawyers, students, young people thinking about entering the profession, there are people out there that do want to help you, whether it's reaching out to FCLN or even, they may not even have to be Filipino, but at least for Filipinos, there is a network of Filipino lawyers that are prepared and willing to mentor or offer advice and guidance.
Thank you. And on that note, FCLN has a mentorship program. And the mentorship program is really intended to do exactly what the panelists have talked about, which is really to mentor, talk about if you have issues on articling or just about to go to law school and so on, is really to do that. So we have a list of mentors, and I encourage any one of you who would like to join that, but also to say, to the people that you meet who want to go to law school, is that FCLN has a mentorship program for entering law school, being a law student, on your way to career path and so on. So that's one of them. The other thing that I omitted to mention, two things, is one for the internationally trained lawyers. So Melissa talked about that, and also Cyril and so on. But there are a lot of our members who are internationally trained. And so Rachel has started a support group for the NCA people who are either undergoing that program or who have finished it. And basically, she has profiled those lawyers who have gone through the NCA program and have been able to offer advice, or at least to answer the questions that were being asked by the attendees. So Rachel has also identified that FCLN is part of the ITL-NCA network, which assists internationally trained lawyers get qualified in Canada. And one of the ways that we're doing that, of course, is this NCA program that is aired twice a month. It's during the day. And because we have to allow for the entire country, and Jesse Apao, who's a director from Edmonton, Alberta, has started a group of NCA qualifiers. And so she has mentioned this to her group. And because they are they're trained in the Philippines, called to the Philippine bar, or primarily the Philippine bar because it's Gisette's group. And they now want to qualify in whatever province they're in. So that is the way that FCLN is helping out. And Rachel herself has gone through the NCA program. So she understands and knows the process that they have to go through. So a mentor group really for NCA candidates. So I think Rachel is saying, well, we can also start a mentorship group for NCA, but I think the program itself is a type of mentorship. On that note, I want to thank everyone, all of you who have come today to participate in celebrating Filipino Heritage Month with the Filipino Canadian Lawyers Network. Our aim is to be part of all the groups of lawyers in the different provinces. And this year, we're happy and pleased to be part of your group. And that next year, we're looking at Winnipeg, because Winnipeg has a great number of lawyers as well. So we want to host it there, and there, a lot of Filipinos in Winnipeg that don't know about the Filipino Canadian Lawyers Network, and it's one way of telling them about us. So I want to thank our panelists. Melissa had to sing. She was asked by the Philippine consulate to sing at the Philippine, I guess, Food and Trade Fair that's happening at Robson Square. And you could all go. It's until 5 o'clock. So, she told me that, and so that's what she's doing. Franco, thank you very much for insight into your career path. I'm going to call him, for some reason, I have him as Rene Jean Nicolas, but it's Rene John Nicholas for telling us about how we can all be part of a tribunal. And I think that's great. Congratulations to you. And tell me that I did tell her about the event today, but I didn't expect that she would be coming. And lastly, Cyril, thank you very much for your insight as well. And Rachel now knows that you can be part of this NCA mentorship network that she has started. So on that note, welcome again, and congratulations, Mabuhay, Filipino Heritage Month. And I welcome all of you to come to Ottawa anytime, contact me. If you need anything, email me. And as I say, the network we created today will be long lasting. So on that note, thank you all. Oh, by the way, there's a lot of food. We have to eat that food or take it home. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. We did say. That's it. Okay, well, we have a bowl. Shall I pass the bowl around? Okay, thank you. Eunice, are we done? Likewise, sometimes we go to alter my job. You should call me. Yeah, I have lunch or whatever.